Good evening, everyone. We are going to call the City Commission workshop for June 15th, 2021 to order. May we have the roll call, please?
Commissioner Vila Vasquez.
Present.
Commissioner King.
He's here.
Commissioner McCool. Here. Commissioner Ramos.
Present.
Commissioner Sosa.
Here.
Vice Mayor Bradford.
She's here.
And Mayor Hersberg.
Here. Okay, may we all stand for the pledge to the flag. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, once again, this evening is a continuation of our 4-day budget workshops. So this evening we have on the agenda first Deltona Water and Sewer, then Construction Services, then Code Enforcement. Mr. Peters, are we starting with Deltona Water?
Yes, ma'am. I'm going to handle most of this. I know Steve Danskin is here. He's the acting Public Works Director, and a significant part of the staff is here also. Very quickly, Deltona Water is responsible for our water plant 17, wastewater plant 2, miles of sewer, potable water and reclaimed water. They have the billing process that includes meters, meter reading, utility billing, customer service. The key things that we want to talk about this evening are where we're heading the coming year. As you all are aware, we have received just recently received, I think, $6.9 million from the COVID relief money. We will get an additional $6.9 million next year. The intent was to pay for new meters out of that, which is $11 million. This is money that we had anticipated spending going forward. But thankfully for the money from Washington, that is money that we won't have to pay for. We will benefit mightily from having the new meters. The meters that we're talking about is a form of AMI meters, which is the ones that we can read and review remotely. So if a customer calls in, they can actually look at the meter information in terms of usage on the computer screen. They can even email it to the customer. So we believe the entire customer service experience will be much improved with the improved data. In addition, we are looking to expand our Eastern wastewater facility by 500,000 gallons. We have been very fortunate with the help of our lobbyist, Georgia McKeon, to get approximately $1.45 million over the last 2 years between DEP grants and 2 allocations from the state legislature, $150,000 and $300,000. That is very close to the total amount of the expansion project. So that is another $1.5 million that we had anticipated having to spend that we will not have to. So obviously, having those dollars come in is going to be very beneficial. So as you go through the budget, you will see that we have the meters. We also are completing the SCADA system. I will go back a couple of years. I know Mr. Sosa was not involved. Ms. McCool was involved through Deltona Strong. When we made a presentation to the commission about cost savings for Deltona Water. The key elements of that were that we were going to put in a full SCADA system that would allow us to operate the water plants remotely. We currently have 17 water plants. The goal is after we get the SCADA completed, we will go down to 11 water plants. And then the Fisher wastewater plant is an antiquated facility. It does not meet the current phosphorus and nitrogen requirements. The cost of upgrading to meet those requirements are anywhere from $12 to $18 million. We have been in communication with Volusia County as of last week. We had a very good discussion. As you are aware, Volusia County is getting $109 million from the COVID relief. And the Utilities Department has asked for a significant amount of money. The county, my understanding, is looking for cost share opportunity with other jurisdictions. And because we're looking to work with them on sending sewer flow to the DeBerry wastewater plant, they're looking to expand that plant from 3.2 million to 5 million. So what we're looking to do is to work with them, get DEP grants for the upgrades to the plant and for the force main down Dirksen to get the flow from the Fisher plant to DeBerry. The wholesale rate that they would charge us, and then we would have a capital component to help offset the cost of the county share of upgrading the DeBerry plant. That total number will be significantly less than what we currently charge, which is $10 a 1,000 gallons. So when you look at right now, 50% of the flow roughly goes to Fisher, 50% goes to Eastern. Obviously, if you take 10 for half and a number for the second half, do an average, you're going to get a reduction. So we're very excited about the possibility of working with the county in that regard. We have had discussion with regard to the need for upgrading our existing facilities, and we have $1 million in here for sewer upgrades and other pipe upgrades. We have 2 personnel requests. One is for basically a field technician, because we are adding a number of new residences to the system. We're putting reclaimed water in older subdivisions that had dry lines. So given the number of feet and the number of new customers, it's imperative that we add an additional field tech position to keep up with the load. Additionally, with the volume of capital projects, remember, in the current year, we're doing the river withdrawal project. While it hadn't started yet, it will be. But from a capital improvement standpoint, we have a lot of demands on our staff. For the first time, we are just about fully staffed. And it's a little bit of a misnomer because my old position still exists, and Steve Danskin is the acting. So technically, Steve is trying to do both the public works director and the city engineer. He's doing a good job trying to do both. I'm trying to help out. And so because they're fully staffed, the administrative function is having to take on more roles. So we're asking to add an administrative assistant position in the Deltona Water admin area. So those are the 2 positions that are being requested. If you look at the printout, we go from basically an end-of-year balance of almost $2 million to 3 years out, we will have $14 million fund balance. So our financial position is going to improve year to year after the coming year because we are going to achieve those cost savings that we've been talking about for the last couple of years. So that's a general quick overview. I know you all have questions, so I'm going to stop at that and let you proceed with the questions.
Commissioner Sosa?
Yeah, so you're only looking at adding 2 staff members at City of Deltona Water. Do you plan on adding any service clerks? Because one of the major complaints I get is extensive call times while waiting. Some of them are 30 minutes to an hour before they can talk to a representative. Are you going to add any customer service reps to that position, sir?
No, sir. The plan is this. With the improved meters that we will be putting in place, the quality of the information that's available and the more timely information will make the customer service process easier. quite often, when a person calls in, they have to give it the history. And then by the time they get to the history, you're 5, 6 minutes into the call before we're even dealing with the current situation. By having the improved information, the customer service rep will be able to see the history of water usage. So it will quicken the process, and we'll also, and like I said, the quality of the data, they can literally send the customer an email with screenshots showing the water usage. The meters, the way they are, is if you have a continuing running meter, the bar will be red. So they will know when they, immediately when they look at it, they can say, ma'am, sir, I'm looking at your meter information for the, for the last 30 days, you've had a continuous running meter. You obviously have a leak somewhere in the house. And then, we can work on they'll get a plumber to fix it, and we'll work on an adjustment. The other thing that we have found is, unfortunately, people tend to exaggerate. We've had people say they were on the phone for 45 minutes. We're able to go back and look at the phone logs and see how long they actually were there. Now, I'm not justifying, but sometimes that 40-minute wait was actually 15 minutes, still too long. But we're looking at some other things that we can do with regard to customer service, including having a private company that will supplement us, so that when we're short of staff like we are right now, or we're short of people for vacation or sick or whatever, we can have this private company come in and supplement our staff. Additionally, the private company would give our customers alternative bill pay options that we currently don't have. Steve Danskin and staff have been talking to several companies that specialize in that, and we will be bringing something forward to the commission, I think, pretty soon.
Okay. I know we get 6.9 million this year and 6.9 million next year. When do you anticipate bringing the new meters on?
We will be bringing forward to you all. We just need to check. When you're dealing with federal dollars, you got to make sure you're following the process in terms of the purchasing and what have you. If it's allowed, what we are doing, Neptune meters, who we currently use, and we've been very satisfied with their meters, has offered, they have contract with other municipalities, large ones, that we can take advantage of their pricing. And so we can piggyback, say on Palm Bay or whomever it may be. In addition, Neptune has agreed to basically finance it. We will pay the $6.9 million as appropriate. They will carry the charge to next year for the additional 4.1 million next year to pay off the balance. So we won't pay an interest rate or anything. They will carry that cost. Okay. And the hope is that within a year of starting, we will be able to be completely converted to the new meters. They have a company that they work with that does the meter installs. We are talking about over 38,000 meters. Interesting thing with Neptune is they literally would take the entire factory and convert it over for a single order. So when we make an order for probably 40,000 meters, they will take that plant and convert it to do our 40,000 at one time. So we don't have to dribble it out. It will all come in at one time. So that's the plan right now. You should be seeing something regarding Neptune in the next month or so.
Okay. Well, you answered my next question, was how long will it take to have it all implemented? So I'll skip to, if we go and we close the Fisher plant and we divert it down to Volusia County over into Berry, the cost of the pipe, obviously, we can't tell at this time, but you said we're going to work with Volusia County on a partnership with that. Now, you said that we're going to get a wholesale rate for sending the sewage down to DeBerry. I know this is going to be a user's question. Will they see a reduction in rates if we once we convert, since we'll be at, a wholesale rate, will the consumer or the end
Oh, you're
user see a reduction in rate?
You're going to get me on the record, aren't you? Our plan is that when we come in with the wholesale rate with a capital element, that we will recommend a rate reduction based on that new rate at that time.
Okay. Now, how's that going to affect the folks that are on the eastern plant? Because will you just see word
All
out?
sewer customers will get a rate reduction.
All sewer customers? Okay. All right. Thank you.
Commissioner Vasquez?
Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Peters, can you just give me a little rundown on the capital request for Wellington and Lombardi, explaining the, it says once completed, we will be able to take a well out of the Blue Spring Water Basin. The Wellington Lombardi, it says, once complete, we will be able to take a well out of the Blue Spring Water Basin. Can you give me a little explanation of that?
That's the existing water plant once we're done with the SCADA system.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Right now, we have to have operators at each of the plants because we do not have a full, robust SCADA system. When we have the full, robust SCADA system, we have the final dollars in this budget to complete it. I've asked Glenn Wickham and his staff to try to expedite it to get it done by this fall. What we are doing, we're in the process of having our operators become dual licensed where they can handle both wastewater plants and water plants. Through attrition, we will have a reduction in staff. We will not be handing out pink slip, but through attrition. But because of the SCADA system, we can meet the demands of the city with 11 plants. We'd actually meet the demand with fewer, but we have a couple plants that we need to keep online for the chlorine residual, such as down on the Deltona Boulevard area. And so the plan is that once the SCADA system is complete, we will be going down to 11 water plants. If y'all want anything to add to it?
Steve Danskin, the Acting Public Works Director, and Glenn Whitcomb. As regarding the Wellington and Lombardi plant reduction and the Blue Springs Basin, the part of our CUP, our consumptive use permit, requires that we remove water withdrawals from the spring shed of Blue Springs. And so we're going to be able to remove one of the wells that's at this location, and so that will help us keep in compliance with our CUP.
Is this one on Lombardi the one behind the old fire station?
Excuse me. Yes, ma'am, it is. It's behind the old fire station at Lombardi. What we're going to do, there's two plants there down the hill from the fire station.
Right.
It's well 27. Well 27, we're planning on piping it into the Wellington water plant. Well 6 operates the other plant where the little storage tank is. Well 6 is the one that we will be pulling out of the Blue Springs watershed. We'll be eliminating that plant. We'll be doing a hydraulic study for the area to increase pipe sizes so we can get water out of Wellington, have better water quality, better pressures, better volume. So that's kind of the plan, and that will eliminate one whole plant plus one whole well out of the Blue Springs watershed.
Nice. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
I have another question, Mr. Peters, and these are questions that have been addressed to me by residents. So they would like to see an auto payment set up to pay the water bill. Currently, you have to go in every month and put in a credit card number, and they're asking, if possible, can they set up their account to be paperless, like, it's popular now? Can they set up an auto pay through a bank account instead of constantly having to key in a credit card number?
Yes, ma'am. It's hard to call you the acting city manager. Mentioned, we've been in conversations with a number of service providers to allow our customers to go to an e-billing. Currently, we mail out every single bill, and as you might expect, the postage and printing is very expensive. So we're going to try and get people onto e-billing. We're going to provide multiple different options. We're looking at pay by text. We do currently have EFT where customers can put in a checking account number and do automatic payments that way, but we're going to make it optional also to do just about
Auto
every
pay.
different way that you can pay, eBay, Amscot, and
Right.
every way to, convenient way to pay.
Right. This is mostly requested by snowbirds. You know, they go away, and if they miss a bill, you know, they have to pay late charges. So if they can set it up automatic, it'd be easier for them.
And that can be done now with an EFT, electronic
Really?
fund transfer, yes. It
I have
is.
to check it out, because I have to go in every month and do it.
It can be done, but you have to print out the form on the website and take it in. You can't do it online.
Right.
Because we were going to do that during the pandemic, and you have to actually physically print it out and then take it in there. So someone that's up north wouldn't be able, if they're up north now, they'd have to wait till they're physically here. So I'm glad to hear. That was going to be one of my questions, too.
Right.
Yeah, we're pretty excited about some
Yeah,
of the
making it easy
conversations
for
we're
our
having.
residents online. Like, we need to use our automation system. And going back to the automation system, have we considered coming up with a call center where everyone who gets a call on any issue, any problem related to the city of Deltona, it goes to this one center, and everybody there is trained for everything, code enforcement, water department problems, and I think it'll take care of, shortage of code enforcement people and shortage of water centers, and, we are growing. The city of Deltona is growing. It's going to continue growing. I don't think I see it going the other way, and we're getting more customers. I think that we are concentrating on the IT department, and I think a call center would be something that we can think about and maybe discuss going forward, but I think it will be beneficial for the city of Deltona.
Madam Commissioner, I would just say this. One of our ultimate goals is to have one-stop shopping, if what you're talking about.
Call center?
Right now, we're struggling customer service both at City Hall and at Deltona Water, and a lot of that is training, which you will see throughout the budget, is that we have really ramped up the training this year in the budget, because there's a recognition of the fact that we have not had the level of training that we need to do just the basic customer service in the areas they are, much less broadening it to where a customer service rep that's used to helping with building permits and code enforcement is now going to be helping with utility bills. But the ultimate goal is to get to that point. And some of the companies that we've been talking about with regard to the privatization, they're better able to do that because they've had the training and what have you. But like I said, right now our goal is to supplement with that. And then hopefully with the supplementing, we can provide the training to our customer service representatives all across the board so that you can come in City Hall and take care of your water bill or your code enforcement issue or building permit, or you could go to Deltona Water and do it. That would be the ideal world, but we're not there yet.
Okay, well, I'm referring to a call center when people make calls, not in person, but, just something to think about, and maybe, during the budget time, look into it. And they can cross-train each other. Code enforcement, who take calls can train the water department who take calls, and, oops, sorry, you know, they can cross-train each other, and I think it would be a big plus for the city of Deltona. Maybe we can look at other cities who have a call center in place. Thank you. Thank you.
Commissioner McCool?
I wanted to just go over and ask, I see that there were some reclaimed water projects, I guess, taken off of this, or was it moved over? Dewey Boster, Coventry, Lake Baton Estates, Live Oak. What's up with those?
Those have been completed. Dewey Boster has been completed. We have provided the pipeline for Saxon Ridge now. We're doing some testing. We've gone through 2 different sections so far to test the old lines. They were put in back in my day, back in the Florida Water days. So they're pretty old, like me. So we're going to have to do some repairs in there before we can get Saxon Ridge all the way online. The other ones, Live Oak, Lake Baton, all those are already online. They've been online since last year. So that's why they won't be in for next year.
Have we taken care of all the issues with Lake Baton Estates that they had out there? We had springs running under people's houses. We had a couple of cave-ins out there. We had water daylighting out there. Have we addressed those issues out there, or have we said that those are developer issues?
I'll turn that over to Mr. Danskin. He deals with this stormwater.
Good evening. There have been quite a number of issues out there. One, a utility provider who we couldn't figure out who, nobody would fess up, drilled through a sewer service lateral and caused one of the problems out there. It undermined the sidewalk and had big problems out there. The repairs that were associated with the installation of the reclaimed, that's all been dealt with out there. All of the repairs have been made. Let's see, the daylighting of groundwater last year in particular was a problem at multiple areas of the city, as you well know. We haven't had any trouble with that since we've gone into the dry season. Now that we're heading back into the wet season, I wouldn't be too surprised if it rears its ugly head again.
Do we have any plans to help mitigate any of those issues out there? Because I know that there were concerns raised before pavement went down out there that weren't addressed either, I guess, by the developer. Developer changed hands, then went bankrupt, so you have a lot of people out there with issues with daylighting still and home quality. There are homes that are cracking, foundations are shifting out there. There's live water basically under these people's house. So I just want to know if there are any plans for us to help them out there with those issues.
That might be better addressed.
On that particular one, this is a private subdivision. Some of the pits are going to require easement from the individual property owners to allow the city on the property. The secondary problem here is the building permit process. We have made a lot of changes with regard to the interface between Public Works and the building department, so that when somebody digs a foundation and they see water, an effort is made to get rid of the groundwater before it becomes a problem with structural. There's a provision in the building code that requires geotechnic reports and proper grading of the site before you go vertical. We have been in communication with the property owners involved. We have not heard back with regard to their willingness to provide the easement. As soon as they are willing to do that, we will be able to assist with removing some of the groundwater that's causing the problem.
That's fine. I just want to, I'm bringing that up because, this is, I know, operational, but we have a responsibility. That's exactly my point in bringing this up, that we have a responsibility when ground is being broken on these developments, especially these big developments, that we are out there and doing exactly what is just said that we're going to be doing, because we should have been doing that from the beginning, and there's a lot of stuff that slipped through the cracks, and we have now residents with homes that are less than desirable because of issues that went through the cracks. That's all I'm saying as far as that goes. So I want to make sure that the people out on Lamplighter are taken care of also. Have we mitigated that issue out there for now, or what are the plans? Do we have any budgetary plans with any of these projects helping them out there also?
One key thing that had changed since we first started talking about Lamplighter is back in the beginning of this conversation, the DEP had put together a draft basement management action plan for Blue Springs. Everything to the west of Providence is in the priority focus area, which means that septic systems have to have a higher level of treatment. Everything east of Providence, a traditional septic system is fine. And in many cases, it's less expensive in the priority focus area to provide public sewer as opposed to the alternative advanced treatment. The lawsuit that was brought on by the environmentalists, I understand has been resolved and is no longer there. I'm still waiting for official word from the health department that they now are going to be enforcing it. But the situation at Lamplighter is that if somebody's septic system is to fail at this point, they will have to put in a $15,000 to $17,000 advanced treatment process, and they would have the annual cost of about $500 to $700 to maintain that system. There are some communities nearby. They're taking the approach that they know the property owners are not going to be capable of maintaining those advanced systems. So they're actually going to start charging on the bill an annual amount. They will get an easement, and the local jurisdiction will actually maintain those advanced systems. These are things that we're going to have to look at long term. Just a quick estimate, guesstimate, is that if we were to try to sewer the entire high priority focus area, we are looking at something in the order of $200 to $300 million to try to sewer that. That is a lot of money, to say the least. In July, the city of DeBerry and Volusia County will be dealing with the Gemini Springs area, where they have septic systems that are either going to have to be converted to advanced treatment or put on public sewer. I advise everybody to watch that conversation because they're going to be dealing with things similar to what we're going to be dealing with at Lamplighter and some other locations. You know, property owners, a lot of them do not have the financial resources to make the connections, to pay the connection fees and everything else. So, you know, these are conversations that we need to watch closely. The problem we're having in Lamplighter, if we would like to get money from DEP to assist us, but, you know, DEP is going to require that we sewer everybody. And right now, the way our ordinances are written, we don't do that. We don't have a requirement to hook up. So the good news is we have done some work in Lamplighter that we promised. We went in and cleaned up the retention ponds in Dewey Boster. We did some ditch realignment work. We have not heard the level of complaints regarding the water levels in the ditches like we were hearing before. So we think that we have given some relief to the problem. And so we will continue to monitor that information. And we are still looking at funding opportunities for the potential sewering of portions of Lamplighter. But when we get to the stormwater discussion, tomorrow night. We have a spreadsheet to show what project we're able to do at the current funding rate and what project we can do at higher funding rates. Right now, in the budget, we're showing $128 a year, which is the current rate for stormwater fee. But similar to what we did a couple years ago when we showed you the green, yellow, and red charts as to what can be funded, we're going to be bringing that back because we're finding that we're very limited on the projects that we can pursue right now. So,
I would like to also ask next what is the dollar amount that we have still in outstanding water bills? I know that it was over $600,000 last time I asked. Where are we at with any recovery of that? I know that people are paying down the bills, but I want to know how much we have that is not going to be recoverable also. I would venture to say we talked about $500,000 due to people running out on their water bills. So my point in asking that is asking if we're moving forward in budgetary season and moving forward with new ordinances and moving forward with charter and moving forward, period, if we are taking this into account, that we're making now, talking about making landlords responsible for rental property with the new licensing, where are we at with the water bills also? Because I know that we have $500,000 at least outstanding debt for that. Is that still correct?
It's been a while since I've asked that same question from our billing department, so I'm working with older numbers, but it was right around $250,000 that's remaining outstanding. We've shut, most of those people off or the rest of the people off, and nobody came in to say, hey, I need my water turned back on. So we, surmised that they were renters and moved out during COVID, and we may never see,
I just moving forward, if we could lock some of that down. I would also ask that we take a look at third-party billing, and when I mean third-party payment systems, because we have residents that will go in on a third party, pay that, and if the third party chooses not to apply that right away, the people are still kind of hosed. And I've been standing in line at the water department when that happens. I think that third parties are predatory anyways. Scott, any of those, I understand that people think that they're good for them, that they can get that paid right away, but it's predatory. And in the long term, very detrimental, I think, to the residents. So if we could take a look at third-party billing, we've made it easy enough that you can drop the payment off, you can do it online. I understand that people might not have money, but it's just as easy to make payment arrangements, I'm assuming with the water department, but we shouldn't have control over who we are letting put money in there. And if third-party billing is not going to abide by what the intent for the resident is, then we should do away and not allow it. So I would like that looked at also, because I'm deeply just disturbed by that.
If I can ask for some clarification, a lot of third parties follow state statute. When you get a third-party loan, you have a 72-hour opt-out. So because of the 72-hour opt-out, a third party will not release the funds to pay your water bill for 72 hours. Mm-hmm. And so therefore, I don't know how we handle that. I have racked my brain about it because we have a fair amount of them. I know we have made some adjustments in a couple cases, but in an ideal world, the third parties would be a little more forthcoming that, they're not going to be making the payments for at least 72 hours. I'm not sure that there is a easy answer to that. So I just offer that for information.
As a municipality, do we have to accept that third-party payment? Do we not have control over saying we won't accept third-party payments? Because here's the thing, a lot of residents don't understand that. They just don't understand that. I know it's personal responsibility. I'm not trying to get off on that say that, it has more to do with personal responsibility. But I'm saying that it's predatory, and I'm asking if we have any control over who we accept payments from. I think that other companies, and so can you clarify that for me?
I personally haven't looked into that, but I can ask.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner King?
First of all, sir, none of us are old. We're older. We're older, but never old. We've got 3 great minds here. I want to, and I'm sorry I'm bringing this up, Mr. Peters, I haven't really talked to you about this, but we're talking here about capital requests and expansion of plants and things like that. We want the water company to be self-sufficient, isn't that correct? Okay. So in the process of becoming self-sufficient and doing what it's supposed to be doing, in the past I've had several conversations with some of our companies around here that are pumping septic tanks and so forth every day, and they are crying for a place where they can dump trucks. Right now they're going to Flagler, they're going to Lake County, they're going all the way down to South Orange and Seminole, not Seminole, Kissimmee. Where's that county? Is that, anyway, they're traveling large distances to go dump a truck. Every one of those trucks pays pretty well to dump. And I think that we should really, when we talk about expansion, let's talk about some expansion that will also bring in revenue other than, again, being our residents and our businesses. Let's look to bring in some other type of revenue. I mean, these people are talking like there's 8 to 20 trucks a day that could come in and dump. And I know that there's probably some issues, sand and so forth, that we would have to deal with to clean it and do whatever we need to do to run it through our system. But it seems like to me that if we put the money out to do that, that we would have a lucrative business in that, and it would be an everyday thing. Because, listen, they're out there every day. I see 5 or 6 trucks myself just driving around town. And they're either stopped somewhere getting ready to work or they're just leaving someplace. Is there any possibility that that's something that the city could look into and possibly work into a budget that will actually bring us in more income to the water company?
Commissioner King, if I can address that. I've had a lot of experience in my past with the septic. The problem that we have found in the past, and Glenn is an expert in this, so he can chime in when I'm finished here, but I'm going to try to say this in a very nice way. Septic is a very high-level poop. It is very rich. It is very hard to break it down. It throws the biology of a typical wastewater plant off. And what ends up happening is the wastewater plant starts falling out of compliance. We use bacteria and things like that. So if you bring in septic in to the system, you need to have a pre-treatment process. Now, the beauty of taking Fisher offline, if we have a facility, and with a great mind like Glenn Wickham over there, there's a potential that we can make Fisher a septic receiving facility provide a level of pre-treatment and then send that to the eastern plant after it's been treated to a minimal level, and we would charge more for the septic. So your idea is an excellent one, but it is one that utilities have struggled with. If we were going to do septic to begin with, all along, we would have designed the wastewater plant differently to a septic. Your idea is good. It'll be something that we will talk about as to whether the Fisher can be used as a pre-treatment facility for the septic to get it to a point that it can go to our normal processing. Because there is a lot of money to be made off of septic treatment. But it's a very difficult one to keep the biology in the plant working properly.
Thank you.
Any other questions, commissioners? If not, I would just like to make a comment on the septage at Fisher. If you look at that in any way, shape, or form, you're going to have to talk to the county about Providence Boulevard, because the amount of trucks that would be going in and out of there with the weight load and everything else of something like that is going to, you have the Fisher part that goes around there, easy in, easy out. But the wear and tear on Providence, which is a horrible road anyway, would absolutely have to be addressed before you even consider looking at bringing that amount of traffic for that type of process. I'm not saying you can't do it. I'm not saying that it's a bad idea, but the road travel situation on Providence absolutely has to be addressed. It's bad as it is. Okay. All right, I think that no more questions.
Madam Mayor, if
Yes.
I can bring up one more thing I just remembered. One of our big expenses is biosolids removal when you finish with the
Right.
process. Volusia County is looking at the possibility of a solar drying facility, and we are having some conversations about that. Maybe something that we can get involved in. What it does is it takes a very wet component, makes it drier and easier to dispose of, because when you dispose of the biosolids, you're doing it on a per ton basis. Right now, it's 90% water. And so if you can do solar drying and get it down to 10% water, the cost of removing the biosolids goes down significantly. So it's a very exciting concept. The other thing is, if the county does it right, the biosolids can be used as a daily covering at the landfill, and that helps keep the odor and the other problems associated with landfill in check. So they're looking at a very innovative process, and there's potential we can be involved in that.
Piggybacking on that, in order to dry those biosolids, they can't be in the middle of a city. Let's be clear about that. You can't. They have to be in an area where, you think development causes a problem in the city, you plop that in the middle of the city and see what happens. It's not possible. So, that's all something you have to look at as well. If the county wants to do it, awesome. Okay, thank you. And Mr. Peters, we're good with Deltona Water then? Then we'll move on to...
Unless you have any more questions yet.
No more questions lit up here, so we'll move on to construction services.
The next area under tab number...
12.
Yep. Is building code and code enforcement services. As I indicated last night, we are asking for 6 additional code enforcement officers and 1 analyst in code area. This will return us to the staffing level we had back in the mid to late 2000s. In addition, we are working diligently within the building department to have less reliance on private sector inspection services. We feel like that we can provide a higher level of service than a private company can. For large projects such as in Amazon, they still have the option of using a private company for all the inspection because they need inspection 24 hours a day when they have a construction project of that nature. So we have had some staff changeover of recent. John Bowden is our there. John comes to us from Palm Coast. He has been a real breath of fresh air in terms of his attitude, his customer service, and the like, and I'm really glad John has joined the team. He is helping us get through some issues that we've had with regard to the infill loss that have been problematic when it comes to drainage or impacts on adjoining properties. In addition, the issues that we have with the elevation certificates, we're getting those corrected. So John has been a real asset. As you know, we brought in John O'Grady to help with the code enforcement process. Mr. O'Grady is back over there with Richard Lovett. And we have gone through a series of 7 workshops on code enforcement. We're about midway through the animal workshops. And I think all of you all would agree they have been very enlightening workshops. The public, while we haven't had a huge number involved, the information is on Deltona TV for people to watch to get more informed in the whole process. So I think the future is bright with regard to our code enforcement process. Under the umbrella of the code enforcement is the discussion that we've been having about rental license, residential rental license program to offset the impact on the city. And Ms. McCool just reminded me of one that had completely slipped my mind, and that is the way the state statute is written, if you have a renter who gets a water meter and they have gone without paying it, we eat it. Just to give you an idea, and Camille can correct me, but I think I'm in the ballpark, that over the last 10 years on these bills that we've had to eat, we are pushing $700,000. You know, that sounds like a huge number. It's $70,000 a year, but this year I think we're going to see a bigger number because, as Steve Danskin pointed out, it appears we had a lot of people during the COVID period that we didn't do cutoffs that have left us with the bill. So you know, that's another area where the rentals have an impact on the city's financial and operations. So we will be working on that ordinance to create the rental license program with the assistance of our attorney's office. And for next year's budget, we will see the impact of that. If we go through with it and we do $250, which has been recommended, that'll be $2.5 million a year. The goal is to split it evenly between code enforcement, fire department, and the sheriff's department. The $833,000 that we would have for code enforcement would pay for the additional staff that we're talking about. And I think that's important to realize. You know, as we have shown, the rental properties are twice as likely to have code violations. So it's obvious they have an impact with regard to the budget. And so for next year, the goal is to have that money to offset the impact of these 7 additional people. Similarly, you know, we will help out with the fire department and the sheriff's department with that money. So the impact to the general fund, you know, the residents of the city who own their properties will be to diminish the impact on them, to where they're not subsidizing the landlords. So I'm not going to dwell on this. We've had a lot of discussions about code enforcement and all. I'm just going to open up the floor now for questions you may have.
Vice Mayor?
Okay, so position-wise, excuse me, we're looking at 1 additional plans examiner, 6 additional code enforcement officers, and 1 code enforcement analyst. How many people do we have doing the fire review side? Is there just one, just Lee? I mean, I guess my concern with that is we're increasing. I know she's buried just as much as, Carl and, going over those main plans, but, if we had another plans examiner, that's 2 people now throwing, 2 or 3 people, I don't know if you review them as well.
I do.
Throwing plans, so now I've got 3 people throwing plans over to Lee, 1 single person, so that's a lot of work.
Well, I've been in talks with the chief and with Assistant Chief Shivers, excuse me. I'm also licensed as fire.
Okay.
One of the new guys that we just brought in is also fire. The plans examiner that we are making an offer to today also has a fire license.
Okay.
So
I mean,
we're in
you
talks
kind of see my concern here is it's like,
Absolutely. Absolutely.
we get it through the first part of plans review, and then, and I've seen it in other cities
It
where
stalls in
it's
fire.
literally like, my plans are 3 months out because they're sitting on, on the fire side, not being able to go anywhere. So I just want to make sure that if we're doing that flow all the way through.
100%, I'm on the same page.
Perfect.
We just have to work that out.
Perfect.
That's all.
Thank you. That was just my concern looking at this. Now, the individuals, the code enforcement officers and analysts, and I want to say I am greatly appreciative that we're trying to do our own inspections. I think using the third-party inspectors has given Deltona a bad reputation. We have some incredible inspectors out there. So, I'm happy to see us going on this route and bringing in and having our own going out there and doing these inspections.
Vice Mayor, I would just like to point out, one of the common themes you're going to be hearing from me is cross-training, multiple licenses. One of the things John is working on is having people in the building department that have multiple licenses, so that, if for some reason we have a lot of field inspections that need to be made, but not as many plans examined, then we have people that can go out in the field and cover rather than having a company like Universal make those coverages. So he's done a really good job of bringing new people in that have multiple licenses. In all candor, we're paying for it. We're not bringing people at minimum pay because we are competing with these private companies now. They're paying a premium for building inspection services, so we have to compete. So that's one of the challenges that we're facing. We're having a fairly high turnover rate, mainly because we're trying to compete with companies that are willing to pay $90,000 for a building inspector. But we're also getting people in where we're asking them to get additional licenses. We will pay them additional for that because the city benefits. It's cheaper for us to do the inspections ourselves than have a third party come in and do it. And so my goal ultimately with the building department is to literally be, it can't technically be an enterprise account, but I want it to be that way, where they pay for themselves to the fees. Because there's really no reason why the general public should be subsidizing the building department. They are a service to a particular thing. People may get upset that it costs X to get a fence permit, but there's a cost involved. And the cost should be what it actually costs. Otherwise, the general public is subsidizing that fence permit. So those are the things that we're working on John's done a great job of getting us in that direction, and I'm really glad to have him on our team.
Me too, me too. Commercial permits, are those eventually going to be put online as well, where if you're pulling a permit for a commercial business, they will be able to be done online?
That would be the ultimate goal. Right now, we're still working to try to figure out our software and make it flow smoothly. So eventually, yes, that is the goal.
It's coming there. No, I think you guys are heading in the right direction, and I've heard some very positive feedback in the field. So, good job.
Thank you.
Commissioner Sosa?
Yeah. On the code enforcement side, you want to add 7 new folks to code enforcement. What exactly are they going to be doing? Are they just going to be doing exactly what we have right now, just reduce the workload?
As you all have seen, we have had an uptick in our activity level with our code enforcement officers, but we're not able to keep up. As we go through the animal control, one of the themes that we've been talking about is the city taking on more control with the TNR program. There's certain practices, and am I saying it right, John? Practices and procedures that we're putting in place so that we have a situation that you and I have had multiple conversations about where, you know, is it a colony, is it not a colony? If we were in more control of the TNR program, we would know if it was a colony, and then we could take the appropriate action. And so therefore, that takes time and effort. And the animal control is a problem. It needs TLC in terms of people, in terms of practices and procedures, and we are committed to improving the entire code enforcement process so that, you know, code enforcement, as you all have heard, includes, you know, basic code compliance, animal control, and waste management. And, you know, we are going through a process. You know, I got an email and a face-to-face with Richard Lovett about, you know, city facilities not being up to par. I told him, cite us. You know, give us a warning like you do everybody else. And if we don't do it, cite us, because we're no different than the public. I despise the concept of, you know, do as I say, not as I do. If we're going to hold the public to standards, we should hold ourselves to the same standard. And I applaud Richard for, you know, stepping up and recognizing that we need to hold ourselves to the same standards we hold everybody else. So, but all of this takes people. And, you know, we, in the mid-2000s, we were 15,000, 20,000 fewer people. The positions we're adding only brings it back to where we were then, but we're still handling 15,000 to 20,000 more people, and I can rest assured that we're handling a lot more rental properties. And they're problematic in themselves because we're not only dealing with the renter, but we're dealing with the property owner, so it's more work. As you all know, we have really stepped up the effort in the CRA area on Deltona Boulevard, and you can see a marked change in the area in terms of the appearance. We're seeing business owners that are taking more pride in their properties. So, you know, we know that, you know, aggressive code enforcement works. Ms. McCool would be happy to know that her favorite Hispanic market is under the microscope right now. The ownership situation there creates very unique challenges that staff is working with. And, you know, I also got to call out Ron Paradise and his staff. They have been an incredible resource for our code enforcement officers with regard to the application of code to particular situations. So it's a team effort on the entire first floor when it comes to the building inspection process and when it comes to code enforcement.
So we're not going to send, I know there was talk about sending animal control to the county. That's off the table?
To be honest with you, the pricing that we got from the county is probably 100% more than what it would cost to hire the additional officers.
How much was that price tag for sending it to the county?
Pardon me?
How much is the price tag to send it to the county?
I believe the number, John, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the number was in the order of $530,000.
Okay, because you're looking for a budget increase of about $566,000.
But that includes other things.
Right.
Now, that includes the salary increases that we implemented this year and things of that nature.
Now, are we going to add more vehicles, or are these guys going to take over a dual role with the current officers? And
What we plan to do is to double up on the vehicles, which means that, starting next year's budget, we're probably going to see an increase in vehicle replacement. But, right now, there's no point having a whole fleet of vehicles out there that, sit half the time. So what we're planning to do is try to double up on them as much as we can.
Okay. I'd like to make a recommendation that you wait on hiring the code enforcement staff until the rental agreement goes into effect and have that pay for the additional code enforcement staff instead of taking it out of the taxpayers' funds.
I respectfully disagree because the longer that we wait in terms of code enforcement staff, the further behind we're going to get. And, we need to get in control of the animal situation and code enforcement as a whole. And I don't think we can afford to wait another year before we hire these people.
So are you looking at another year before the rental agreement's ready?
The plan right now is that we will come forward with some code sometime in the fall, have the initial billing go out in July of 22, with payments due by September 30th of 22, so that the money would be in place for the 22-23 budget.
Thank you.
You good, Commissioner? Commissioner Ramos?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just wanted Commissioner to touch a little bit towards the end about vehicles, and I see we have two potential here, truck for enforcement and for animal control, and I just want to bring up, I know we've spoken about this, Mr. Peters, but keeping in mind the transition that we're doing with vehicles as we talk about electrical vehicles, that we keep that into consideration, especially as we move forward and eventually maybe for next budget year with the increase of trucks, that we just keep that in mind because we're headed that way.
Commissioner Ramos, I'm smiling right now, but you obviously haven't been watching the news lately. The company that we were looking at for the electric pickup trucks is in financial trouble right now. So I'm not sure that's going to be an option here soon.
And not necessarily about that company, but I'm just keeping in mind, just because whether that company or another company, electric vehicle is where we're headed. So I just want us to keep that in mind. It doesn't have to be any one specific company, but thank you.
Commissioner Vasquez?
Thank you, Mayor. Do we know how the total number of homes currently in Deltona, with including whatever was built lately, finished, sold, people living in it? Do we have a number?
I do not have that number.
Okay.
You're asking for the total number of homes?
Yes, sir.
Okay, I can tell you there are 38,000 water meters, and that's on Deltona Water. Now, you also have Del North, which I understand is probably another 4,000 to 5,000. So roughly 40,000 homes.
Does that include commercial?
42,000.
Does that include commercial?
All right, somebody's going to have to help me here.
It does, yeah.
So what was the total again? About 40,000, he said?
42?
42,000.
But that includes commercial, so it's not all residential.
Okay. So we have 42,000 homes, including commercials, in Deltona that probably own animals, right? Cats, dogs. And how many code enforcement staff do we have?
We currently have 12 code enforcement officers.
For 42,000 homes. Okay. So I would think that code enforcement is probably not the problem of us having with the animals. I think is what you said is the shortage of staff. And, we need to have more people to cover all these homes around here. And the other request that I would like to make is, I think the stores on Deltona Boulevard, I think is what called Deltona Plaza. Is that what it's called? On Providence? Is that the name of it, Deltona Plaza? The one that we are addressing, we are referring to the Spanish Market? Is Deltona Plaza? No?
No.
Well,
You're talking to the one on Providence and Elkham?
Providence and Elkham?
That's the, yeah. Yeah.
Well, I mean, right, but, one of the comments that was made to me by the owner of the supermarket there, the Spanish supermarket, is that he's getting a lot of people coming over to him and complaining to him, and he wants us to make sure to let people know that he's not the owner of that plaza. He just owns that space, and the way we're addressing it, it makes it look like he's the owner. So just wanted to bring that up. Thank you.
Okay, Vice Mayor?
Home businesses. We are seeing a major uptake. I noticed you guys have on here 42 and an anticipated of 50 next year. And I don't know if this is going to go under code enforcement or if it's going to go under a little bit of both of you guys, because I'm even driving down Howland now and I'm seeing open for business signs in residential homes. So I know we had previously talked about it. There is a lot of people working from home. The pandemic caused that. So how are we exactly handling that and regulating it as far as that goes? Because honestly, I don't know how to say this nicely. When I see a residential home and I see a open for business, I think one said open, doing taxes in the window, and it definitely looks like a residential area. Is code enforcement checking on them and saying, hey, we got that BTR? Are we doing different restrictions on home-based businesses than we do, somebody, or are we requiring anybody who's even working at home? Do we have parameters on that, I guess, is my question for people who are working from home now?
There are some parameters. Fire is involved in that. They are checking on business tax receipts. I know that Assistant Chief Shivers is on top of that daily. I don't believe code is doing anything as far as that goes. Am I right, Richard?
Just in the last, I'm going to say 2 months, I'm seeing signs pop up in residential windows, and it's distracting. So the problem is you're going through a residential area, or you're going down a residential street, and I know when we did the sign ordinances came up, you've got somebody turning their head. There's a reason that those things are required in certain areas and districts.
Correct. And that one that you were talking about on Howland, we did deal with him. The last conversation with him, he was supposed to be coming in and meeting with myself and Ron to set up what he wanted to do, and because we said we cannot be doing it out of the house. So he was trying to use it he was doing a free service to people, and we're like, no, it's not a free service. You're running a business. So that's why we made him shut it down.
Right. And I mean, I'm not opposed to people working from home. I know it's the new in. I just want to make sure that we have all the procedures and protocols and, everything in place so that everybody's being, treated the same. I mean, I ran into it myself. So I don't think I've seen anything come before us yet, so I think it's something that, as we're talking for the future, we need to be looking at this, because we're going to have a lot more people working from home.
Yes, we do have ordinances that do stock and trade, and then we also do for traffic, and there's other things that we look into. So we look at which one it really runs down to, what they're doing. And so if they're bringing the traffic there, then that's what we go under, and we
Okay.
address it that way.
Perfect, thank you.
Commissioner McCool, you took your name off? Okay. So seeing as no more comments, I'd like to make a few. Starting with electric vehicles, Commissioner Ramos, the policy committee that I'm on, it's one of the, we just had a presentation on electric vehicles. And they're working on the pickup trucks, and they even have the motorcycles for the police department. Some of the cities have contracted with some of those vehicles. The problem is the fleet vehicles are not ready yet. They will be, but they're not quite ready yet. So that's one of the things they just found, the Department of Transportation, Florida Department of Transportation's electric vehicle policy or their program. I'll send that to Mr. Peters, and he can send that out to everyone so you can kind of see what the state is looking at in that department. I agree. I mean, it's great that we have the chargers out there, but until they get the trucks that we need, I think they're coming, but we can maybe look into that. Which brings me to another comment about the fleet that we have out there. Comments have been made that some former employees had trucks out there that were never used, have very little mileage on it. How are we incorporating those into the fleet? And if we have a ton of vehicles that are sitting out there all the time and not getting used, I'm not saying that that's the case, but how are we reducing our fleet? Are we repurposing that? What is the plan for that?
We are already utilizing them now.
Okay, they're being utilized? Okay. Concerning the home business ordinance that we have and passed multiple years ago, I don't believe the governor has signed the latest bill yet. I don't know if you know, Mr. Peters, on home businesses. The bill was bad, it got better. Then when it went to get passed, they passed the bad bill instead of the good bill, right, Mr. O'Grady? I don't believe that's been signed yet. If that is signed, we're going to have to revise our home business ordinance and look at how you enforce home businesses. And in other words, you can still enforce the parking regulations, the stock and trade and all that. You just cannot single a home business out in any manner and tell them to do something different or prohibit something that you would not do to a storefront. So the good thing is all the parking, the stock and trade, those things all we're still able to manage if it interferes in a residential area. And that is something that, in my view, we haven't done. There's a lot of home businesses that have stock and trade in their driveway on the side of their house that you can see, especially the scrappers, my personal favorite, everywhere. And these people have a detriment on the neighborhood, and they have a detriment on the city, and it's an eyesore. So I am very good with having additional code enforcement / animal control personnel, provided there's some sort of a core guideline that we are going to use to clean this city up. Because if it doesn't start to get cleaned up, the next downturn is going to be worse than the last one. And it's imperative that we get a rental ordinance put in that's realistic, that's enforceable, not some fantasy land that nobody can enforce because it doesn't comply with this, or it doesn't match our home business, therefore we can't do blah, blah, blah. It has to be right, and it has to match, and it has to be enforceable, or forget it, period. Because if you drive around portions of this city, Commissioner Avila Vasquez, you have said what the residents have told you, what they've told me is it looks shabby, looks like a dump, looks like a slum. The last 2 years, this city has gone downhill. Possibly because of the amount of rentals, possibly because of the amount of turnover of homes, possibly because of the shortage, because I know that you constantly have people leaving. In enforcement services, you have constant turnover. The other thing I see in this budget is training. And when you send me the dashboard, like you send all of us the dashboard, it always says there's no training because of COVID. What's the scoop on the training? Do we have training coming up? Because every new officer needs to have a lot of training, including the ones that are there. It's not fair to send you guys out there with no solid training.
Yes, they've just opened up training. They're supposed to be putting it online soon. So we're expecting that to be in the next month that we'll have that open training. So yes, they've just opened it back up for us.
And it's budgeted, and please, in every single department, take advantage of the training. Things are moving far too quickly in every aspect to not take advantage of that training. And we've been cheap in the past and not provided training. Thank you, Mr. Peters, and your staff for encouraging that, because there's no way we're going to build a solid base of employees without offering them some type of training. They have to have it. The other question I wanted to ask is in regards to the infill lots, a lot of the infill builds that we have. In the past, I've had residents call me and say, well, on this set of plans here, it says it's supposed to be 13 feet between the house and the lot line and so on and so forth, and it's only 11. Why is that? And who inspects that? And is that something that's realistic? Are we better with our inspections now? Are we kind of going outside the box of the house and maybe looking at what should be done now?
Yes, ma'am. Well, I can't answer as to why it didn't happen in the past. I can tell you that it will not happen in the future. I am going to be requiring, and I spoke to Steve Danskin about it, for every lot that's located in a flood zone, I am going to require the elevation certificate to come in with the plans. I am going to require the elevation certificate to come in with the form board survey, and I am also going to require a final survey so that we can get the grading and everything under control. And yes, my inspectors will be checking the locations of the slabs and making sure that they are where they're supposed to be.
Okay, because I am willing in a budget to provide whatever these departments need to get us up to speed and do things the proper way. Because as we've heard today, in the end, it costs us more to have to mitigate a lot of these problems.
Correct. And they are all things that could have been done in the past. I'm not going to say what happened because I don't really know. I just do know that you will not hear any more of that in the future.
And one more question, sir, regarding flood zones. Are they now going to be more identified through the individual property as opposed to the area, is what we're hearing from the state level and from FEMA?
Steve, can I, not that I know of, the FEMA flood map is what it is.
And maybe it's from an insurance standpoint. Maybe it's more for an insurance standpoint that they're going to be looking, instead of the area, more at the individual property, is what I just heard it last week. So I don't know how that's going to work for the city, or even if it affects the city. But it'll be interesting to see. I'll find out more the next time I'm at that policy committee meeting. But if you haven't heard anything, then.
No,
Okay.
as a matter of fact, just recently went to the Florida Floodplain Managers Conference, and there was no mention of
Okay.
that.
It might be insurance. It might be that they were discussing insurance. I'll find out. But it was going to be more targeted toward the individual property than.
Madam Mayor?
Yes.
If you have an area that right now is a Zone X, which means it had not had a floodplain level put on the map, if a new development comes in, part of our requirement is that the engineer determine what that flood elevation is and get what's called a letter of map amendment or revision, and that is done, and then it becomes part of the floodplain map from that point forward. You have to go online quite often and find these letter and map amendments and revisions. But we have a lot of areas in the city that are Zone X, which means they do not have a known elevation. And so as part of our process on development review, the engineer had to put an elevation to it, get it approved by FEMA, and then we would get the necessary elevation certificates based on that.
Okay, and the last question I have regarding enforcement and buildings and so forth, do we have anything budgeted for any type of drone activity for doing some of the inspections and so forth with drones? I asked for that 5 years ago and I got laughed at.
Where I came from, in Daytona and Palm Coast, we did use drones. It's a little more complicated because of the laws regarding filming.
Right.
It is something that I will probably implement. It's going to take a little time. I have to get my staff involved and trained the way they should be right now and get the key people in place. Right now, I would be the only one who's actually a licensed drone pilot to go out there and try to do all the inspections. I can't do that. But that would be something that I definitely would explore. Absolutely.
Okay,
And
great.
Madam
And-
Mayor, if I can jump in, I've already approved for them to go to the drone technology. The problem that we have is the way the state laws are, a roofing contractor, there are 3 separate steps in terms of inspection. State law allows a roofing contractor to say that he met those requirements. So if they choose to do that part, then really all we're looking at, and correct me if I'm wrong, John, if we're looking at the penetration to make sure they're properly flashed and all that, the drone allows it to get up in the area of the roof without having to physically get on the roof, which risk management and our insurance company frown very heavily on us doing that, so we don't. But I think it's important people realize that even though you don't see our inspectors going on the roof, most of the time, the roofing contractor has certified the 3 parts because otherwise they could be in 3 separate phases of the roof work, and if they have to wait on inspections, they lose time. So, they changed the law to where they can certify that the work was done in accordance with the building code. And so with the drone, we can take a close look at it without having to get on the roof.
That's great, and I'm hoping that we have a budget dollars available for that, should it come to that, and also drones in any other department, because that's the way of the future. If we can adequately use them, that would be great. Okay, thank you. Commissioner McCool?
Yeah, I just had 2 questions. I want to make sure that I misheard, or I want to clarify. When we're talking about these floodplain amendment maps, right? Are we making them get those approved before we come back with the okay for something coming in front of us for development? Is that what I heard?
Can you say that one more time?
So we have development coming in, right? And we approve a certain density, and they say, oh, we're waiting for the map approval to come back or amendments to come back, right, which they have to send out for. And if this says, if they don't agree with what we have here, then we will decrease density based on that. Did I hear that brought up? Is that what you were talking about?
Commissioner, we have implemented that on a case-by-case basis. One of the last rezoning cases that was heard by this body, contained a provision within the written development agreement to do just what you said, to reduce density if the floodplain expanded based on further study. Like I said, it's just case-by-case basis.
Okay. Second question is, I want to find out if moving forward with that, we have a mitigation process for properties, the infill lots that have been developed right? We had some issues with some infill lots being developed on property that was probably not best suited for development. I know that in one case over on Abbey Terrace, a lot was abandoned because they just said it wasn't going to be worth it to get where they needed to go. However, the property that butted up to it over on Picasso Drive was built on, I watched this for a year as water was coming up from the ground, and you guys know which one I'm talking about. That property was developed, and you go by that property still yet today, and the people had no idea that there were issues on that property before they bought the property. So I'm just saying, what do we do to fix the ones that slide under the radar? Do we have a mitigation process, and do we have a grievance process for people that have developed or developed on property and then come to find out that maybe it shouldn't have been, it escaped on a technicality, and just because it's allowable to do that we should, what kind of quality is that? Now these people are living on wet, soggy property because it was allowed, and everything that should have been done to that property before it was developed wasn't. And not only that, the builder didn't disclose that there were the issues. They wanted to unload that property is what they wanted to do. So now we have residents around this town where stuff slipped under the radar or something happened that live on, they don't have a grievance process. They've been working for a couple of years to try to get this mitigated. I understand that we're not fortune tellers, but I'm telling you, we all know what that property that I'm talking about looked like. So I want to find out what that mitigation and what that grievance process will be moving forward. Because we've admittedly said that you don't know how that happened, but it ain't going to happen anymore. So what about the ones where it happened to? What do we do for those residents? Because we're talking about their homes, their life savings have gone into these properties. I want to know what we're doing.
Well, I could speak for my department. We deal with the Florida Building Code, and unfortunately, there's nothing in the Florida Building Code that allows us to remedy those situations. Again, I can tell you that it's not going to happen going forward. I don't know what we have planned for the properties that have already been developed this way, but I am unable to do anything about that as far as the Florida Building Code goes.
I'm bringing it to your attention because it's
Madam
a past
Commissioner,
issue.
if I can address this. A lot of what you're talking about is drainage related. State of Florida has what's called a common enemy doctrine in drainage law, and that is that stormwater is a common enemy. Everybody has a right to deal with the stormwater as best they can without unduly harming the adjoining property. Case law basically is that unduly harming is collecting the water and putting it onto the other property, like in a pipe or a ditch. You're intensifying the impact on the adjoining property. If you let it just sheet flow onto the adjoining property, that meets the requirements of common enemy doctrine. The grading plans that we use, the HUD standards, there's A, B, and C. Is that right, Steve? And A, B, and C are designed to handle drainage according to which way the land is tilted. So what we do is we review each one for compliance to the HUD A, B, and C. And I will tell you that prior to coming here, the city of Deltona has one of the best overlot grading requirements in Central Florida. I refer to it many a times in previous employees because it includes the HUD standards, which is pretty unusual. If properly administered, if properly reviewed, and if properly inspected in the field, we shouldn't have the level of problems that we have had in the past. One of the things that we discovered right after Steve came on board is there's a provision in the building code that literally almost requires the lot to be graded before the house can even start going vertical. And, you know, that would have absolved ourselves of a lot of problems over on Picasso and Lamplighter and a couple of other places. So, you know, we have made the substantive changes within our process here. We have a staff that's committed, because quite frankly, it's quicker for us to deal with it up front and reviewing it properly than it is to try to fix it after the fact. And, you know, you talk about an appeal process and all that. That appeal process is usually getting staff to come out there and figure out a way to fix the problem after the fact, and that's not a fun place to be. And so we have a recognition that if we take care of it up front, it's not going to be a problem at the end. So that's our commitment to the residents of the city in terms of avoiding these problems in the future.
And I appreciate that. I appreciate staff. My frustration is not at staff. Trust me when I say that I know that we have more than qualified people for this, and we have professionals, and I love our staff. My point is that we might need more of it. I mean, we just had a problem over at Lake Baton Estates and over in that area over there, development going on, and we ended up having to, pay for people to get their pools clean and houses clean because the developer forgot to put sod down or didn't keep the property wet down like they were supposed to, and it inundated a whole the back half of a subdivision with dirt. It ruined these people's houses. It was a quality of life, a quality of health issue. So when I'm saying these, I'm bringing these issues up because that's my residents, constituents come to me and tell me this stuff. It's known. So I'm saying that's the problem. I don't know what the answer is. I know that we have qualified staff, but do we have more of it? That's how it ties into budgetary concerns, you know, because it is. When we go back, and as you said, when we go back after the fact, it's frustrating to try to mitigate instead of front load the solution on the end. That's all I'm saying. Trust me when I say, I'm not saying anything about staff. I'm not saying anything about what our solutions are, but I'm letting you know for budgetary reasons, we're talking about spending funds, spending manpower to go out and fix problems when they shouldn't occur to begin with. So that's what I'm trying to bring up. That's all I have. Thank you.
And I would also say, Commissioner and City Manager and staff, that this is not only a city issue. The lots that we know of, at least and I know of what Commissioner McCool is talking about. I know lots close to Commissioner Avila Vasquez and on my street. For 20 years, those lots were denied a septic tank permit. They were denied a permit from the health department every time that they would be asked if someone was interested in building on that. In the last 3 years, there's no more denial for those septic tanks. And those measures that were in place from the health department, because you can't build a house, especially the infill lots, because none of these houses that we're talking about, aside from Lake Baton, are on sewer. They're all on septic. And so when you have the health department saying, okay, here you go, and then you have the groundwater come up and you break the whatever it does and it runs all over the place, that was prevented by the health department not issuing a permit because they didn't pass the perk test 20 years ago. And that happened to multiple homes. And so it's not only the city of Deltona. When the county health department allocates a permit for a lot that should probably not be built on, there's that mitigation as well. So, because again, they couldn't build it without a septic tank permit, right? It's not allowed. So, I mean, there's plenty of blame to cast around it, but I think that, like Commissioner McCool said, from a budgetary standpoint, we have to, going forward, do the best we can to mitigate, and sometimes you have to say no. And it's sad that someone bought that house and wants to put a house, bought that lot and wants to put a house on it, but at some point, all of us are paying for it. Vice Mayor Bradford and Commissioner Avila Vasquez, then we'll wrap up.
I'm almost just going to say, when you brought this up, both of you guys, this is almost a topic I think we need to workshop, because these are serious acquisitions that we up here tend to get the phone calls and the comments on, and we could all sit here and I'm sure tell stories, but I am in agreement as well that when it comes to these, you know, the residential developments and any of those, we need to be having the same required elevation on these, and that those homes can't be built in those. So I would like us to, if possible, so we can keep going tonight, let's see if we can't get a workshop on this.
Madam Commissioner, we just went through the schedule for the next month and a half.
Oh, I understand it's going to be down for a little bit.
I just want to give you all an update.
Yeah.
After we go through the workshop, we'll be coming back to you at a workshop the 4th Monday in June to finalize the budget based on comments that we get the 4 evenings. Then the first workshop in July, which would be the 12th, we're having a public records workshop. The second workshop in July, which will be the last Monday, we're having the supervisor of election come over and talk about the redistricting process and how it works. I think it's very important because with the census information, the redistricting is a very important process in Volusia County, and Ms. Lewis is going to come over and explain that whole process for us. So at this point, a discussion of what we're talking about is going to be pushed into August.
Yeah, no, that's
I'll let you
fine.
know.
I'm just saying, let's bring it up so we can keep moving tonight down the road. And as long as you don't throw anything on our, 4th of July weekend celebration, I think everybody's kind of excited about that one. Yeah, I'm good with August. I'm just saying, I think it's something down the line we need to have a workshop and discuss.
Okay, Commissioner?
Thank you, Mayor. And I know that we're talking about a workshop, but I just want to get a confirmation from either Mr. Peters or Ron. I know one of the issues that we had discussed that you guys were going to change was not only the current, well, yeah, it involves the current homes, is the change of elevation, a new home that affects a house that's been there for a while, and it just destroys the house. And I mean, I have a video to show you what it has done. So I'm hoping that that also has been added into your, your inspection plans and stuff when new houses are built out here and then you have current houses down here. And I think you're building some of them around there also. I drove through there and I was like, oh my God. I mean, the street is up here and the house is down here, so.
That'll be something that'll be discussed at the workshop as well.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, so we've gone through our 3 items this evening. Is there anyone from the public that wanted to speak?
Madam Mayor, there are no public comments.
Okay, we'll close the public comment portion. And tomorrow night, we will be back here, same time. And tomorrow evening, it will be Public Works, the Transportation Fund, the Stormwater Fund, and Planning and Development, the CRA, and grants. An exciting evening for you, Mr. Paradise. And City Manager, any comments?
No, ma'am.
We are adjourned.